Sara Snow, green lifestyle expert. You may know me from my TV shows, newspapers, and radio, books, or blogs. I help you incorporate green practices into your daily life so you can enjoy a more sustainable and healthy lifestyle. I'm so excited to see the significant strides that have been made toward embracing sustainability and creating a green culture in Indianapolis, the city I call home. Under the direction of Mayor Greg Ballard and the Office of Sustainability, Indianapolis is advancing the environmental, social, and economic sustainability for all Indianapolis residents. One of Mayor Ballard's goals is to build partnerships and advance opportunities for green building.
Indianapolis is a great place to live, work, and play. In order to provide our citizens with a genuine quality of life, we must also be a city that values cultural and environmental resources. That's why I've pledged to make Indianapolis one of the most sustainable, livable cities in the Midwest. Sustainability in Indianapolis means using best practices to create lasting environmental, economic, and community vitality. By enhancing our quality of life today, we are ensuring that future generations can enjoy a healthy, resilient, and beautiful Indianapolis. Sustainability initiatives in Indianapolis promote an integrated approach to the management of our air, water, and land. In 2008, I created the city's first Office of Sustainability in order to provide long-term cost savings and to improve our environment. This office and the Sustain Indy program are focused on improving the quality of life for our residents while enhancing our local economy. We are improving water quality by using green infrastructure, such as rain gardens and pervious pavements. We are lowering the operating costs of city-owned buildings and reducing emissions by utilizing energy-efficient building management systems. We are also enhancing recycling options for our residents and constructing new bike lanes across the city. The city's Office of Sustainability takes a public-private partnership approach to meeting its goals. This approach is especially critical in green building initiatives. These initiatives are most successful when local government, private organizations, and individuals work together to incorporate sustainable development practices into our city's blueprint. Indianapolis is proud to serve as home to many organizations that embrace principles of sustainability and green building. Keep Indianapolis Beautiful, the Nature Conservancy, and the new Wishart Hospital are just a few of those organizations leading the way.
There are many components to a sustainable lifestyle that are not only applicable at home, but also where you work. One major part of a sustainable lifestyle is green building. So what is green building? Green building is the process of creating structures that are environmentally responsible and resource efficient throughout the lifespan of a building. The purpose of a green building is to reduce our overall impact on the natural environment while also considering the health and well-being of the people who use it. So why is green building so important? On average, people in the U.S. spend 90% of their time indoors. So it makes sense to create spaces that are healthy and efficient for the people who use them. Buildings in the U.S. are responsible for nearly 40% of our energy consumption and 15% of our water use. Green buildings are created to ensure better outcomes for the natural environment and our wallets. This is done by carefully considering all the impacts of a building project. Green buildings expand and complement the traditional building concerns of costs, utility, durability, and comfort. Unlike a traditional building, a green building is a high-performance building because it is able to function in ways a regular building cannot. For example, a green building can naturally infiltrate rainwater to avoid flooding. It can also capture and store rainwater for day-to-day tasks, such as flushing toilets and watering the landscape. This reduces costs for the building owner, conserves water, and is a relatively simple way to integrate sustainability in the workplace and community. Green building encompasses many potential strategies such as energy efficiency, materials usage, water management, and quality of life for building users and the surrounding community. Each of these elements are considered from the outset of a green building project. Site and water considerations can include rainwater management in the form of green roofs or cisterns, or water conservation in the form of low-flow fixtures. Energy considerations might include using renewable energy sources such as wind power or solar panels. Also, energy-efficient heating and cooling systems can conserve energy. Materials for a green building can include using locally sourced products, recycled content furniture, or sustainably harvested wood for construction. Finally, green building can impact quality of life not only for the building users, but also for the surrounding neighborhood. So how can you tell if a building is green? A green building will have some components that are obvious and others that are less obvious. The most obvious elements are things like natural lighting, a green roof or cistern, and water and energy efficient fixtures and appliances. The less obvious components include the design, materials, and equipment that have long-term savings and provide environmental benefits, like an efficient heating and cooling system. Another way to distinguish green buildings from traditional buildings is based on various rating systems. LEED is one such rating system. LEED stands for Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design. The LEED Green Building Certification Program is the nationally accepted benchmark for the design, construction, and operation of green buildings. It is a standardized model which uses an integrated design approach. This system, as well as other rating systems, serves as a framework for builders and designers to create green buildings. How can green building be important to an organization? An organization that occupies a green building will see many benefits. Studies show that a healthier work environment leads to improved productivity and increased occupant satisfaction. Building owners will see long-term cost savings through lower operating costs. But the benefits of a green building aren't limited to within the walls of the building itself. A green building can be representative of the values of an organization. Here in Indianapolis, an example of this is the Nature Conservancy's new Efroymson Conservation Center. Their new Indiana headquarters building is the pinnacle of green building in Indianapolis and represents the organization's mission in Indiana and nationally.
The Nature Conservancy is an international not-for-profit organization. We work in places all around the world, and our mission is to protect the diversity of life on Earth, to protect the plants, the animals, and the natural community types that represent that diversity, and we do it by protecting lands and waters that species need to survive. The Efroymson family has been involved with the Nature Conservancy for many, many, many years. The late Dan Efroymson was not only chair of our board, but he was chair of the board of directors of the national organization. Lori Efroymson is on our board, and she really felt strongly that the Nature Conservancy needed to not be in the shadows anymore, that we really needed to create an identity and take us to the next level. And so it was through her vision and her leadership that the Efroymson Conservation Center, which is what we call this building in their honor, was built. Well, as a not-for-profit organization, you live and die by donations that come to you. And so one of the challenges we had is that we wanted to make sure that we could raise enough money from donors to build the building, but it wouldn't take away from the donations that we needed for our conservation work on the ground. And so we got a lot of pledges, and we brought new people to the table, people who were interested in a really sustainable building, but maybe not so interested about on-the-ground conservation. So a whole new cadre of donors came to us because of the vision of this building. We wanted to see if we could build to that highest level at the same price that we could for just normal construction.
What we have is a building that uses 43% less electricity than a typical building of its size and uses 82% less water.
Our previous building that we leased, we were spending about $90,000 a year for that leased space for about 7,500 square feet. This building is a little over 20,000 square feet, and we estimate the annual operating cost is going to be about $55,000 a year. So almost half of the operating cost, and yet 3 times the size of the building.
As we've just heard, a strong relationship between the Nature Conservancy and its funders helped lay the foundation for the success of this green building project. Another relationship, the relationship between the client and designer, is also important to ensure that goals and expectations are met. While this is true for any building project, it becomes critical in a green building project. Many of the systems in a green building are integrated, such as lighting, heating and cooling, and energy. The client and designer must work together toward a common goal to achieve an efficient, sustainable outcome.
We wanted to find an architectural firm that really fit the values of the Nature Conservancy. We interviewed a lot of different companies, and ultimately we chose Axis Architecture. They're a local firm. They have great experience in designing sustainability features into buildings, LEED experience, and one of the bonuses was they're just a block away from this building, and so they were part of the neighborhood, and it was really important for us to bring local people within our own neighborhood into this building. What developed was an amazing partnership, a very collaborative, robust partnership of give and take between our two organizations that really allowed them to design a building that designed really our heart and soul of who we are as an organization into the building itself.
Well, starting back when you hired us, 2007, we really kind of sat down with you guys, figured out what you needed in terms of program for the space, understood what your goals were in terms of sustainability and marketing and things like that. And I believe that we kind of pulled all those together and created something really special that works well for you.
Right, and I think we weren't as familiar with green building, obviously, as you are. So from an owner's perspective, we were typically thinking about the end result and how we were going to use that end result, but we didn't know the nuts and bolts of how to get there. So it was an educational process for us as well, that the architect and the construction teams brought us along throughout that journey and helped us understand, if you're trying to get here, here's how you're going to do it. Mm-hmm. And in my mind, green building was one of the things that really made a lot of intuitive sense. It wasn't over-engineered.
Yeah, I think part of this process, too, is trying to understand that you have to think about everything at once from the very beginning so that you can get to a point where it's all making sense and it's all very intuitive.
The integration of systems was particularly important for the site and water component of the project. Before the design for a new building can begin, the design team must determine how the different parts of the project will fit together on the site. These components include the parking lot, landscaping, and the building itself. A primary consideration in the process is the site hydrology, which is how stormwater is collected and stored on site. The goal in sustainable site design is to capture, store, and filter as much stormwater as possible. This can be done using a variety of green infrastructure techniques, such as rain gardens, porous pavements, and cisterns. The client and designer must determine which strategies are best for the particular site. This ensures that each component will work together in a sustainable, integrated site design.
Well, initially, going for LEED Platinum kind of drove us to looking at an urban site based on some of the site sustainability requirements regarding connection to the community, things like that. Open or maximizing open area was difficult in that regard. Because we're an urban site, we're a smaller site. But by putting the building further to the south and kind of reinforcing that urban edge, we were able to leave a decent amount of area to the north for plantings. The strategies we used on site for stormwater retention were the green roof, the cistern, the sloped landscape back into the bioswale area just south of the parking lot.
The stormwater system for the Nature Conservancy development is one of the most exciting I've ever worked on. It takes the elements of the building itself, a green roof, the internal water use or reuse through a cistern, and then incorporates the landscaping and the underground gravels, sands and gravels for the infiltration gallery, all into a single unit stormwater management system. The green roof starts everything off by collecting the water and taking it and cleaning it before going down into the cistern. The cistern holds only so much water, about 1,500 gallons, which that is used back into the building itself. What isn't used in the cistern is bypassed over to the infiltration gallery underground, a large pipe that has holes in it and allows the water to infiltrate. On the surface, we have our native landscaping, which is from a LEED criteria, a water conservation landscape management tool, and in direct connection to the permeable or porous pavement and the bioretention system. All of these go directly, take the stormwater directly to the underground infiltration gallery, such that all the water either ponds on site and infiltrates through the soils or is directed down underground and infiltrates into the sands and gravels. The site's parking system is made up of permeable pavement. The permeable pavement is a concrete brick that allows water to go directly through it. Instead of conventional concrete, which water runs off of carrying pollutants, permeable pavement takes that water and treats it prior to discharging it into the bioretention system. Looking at alternatives of rain gardens, bioretention, green roofs, cisterns, and other natural management techniques, we were able with this site to bring forth the goal of a zero discharge site. All the water stays here.
The types of plants that are used on the Nature Conservancy live roof are typically sedum plants. They're all perennials. They'll go dormant in the winter, they'll come back in the spring. During the summer months, they're all going to bloom, and they're very drought tolerant, so they'll need very little irrigation. The live roof system is a hybrid tray system, so it's meant to grow together. It comes to the site fully vegetated, so when it came here it was about 95% grown. The maintenance for it is very minimal. About every 2 weeks or so, somebody will come up on the roof and walk it, look for any weeds if anything's growing, determine if it needs any irrigation. The live roof system that's here is going to hold about 99% of the rainfall that it's going to accumulate, but it kind of acts like a sponge. So once that soil is saturated and it's going to overflow, the water will continue to roll through and be collected in a cistern so it can be used for other irrigation on site. If you have a regular membrane roof, you're going to have temperatures of about 140 degrees or higher. There's going to be a lot of UV damage to the roof over time. When an owner elects to put a green roof on it, you're going to help to cool the roof. It's going to bring the temperature down to around maybe 120 degrees typically. By adding a live roof or a green roof system to an existing membrane, you are increasing some cost up front, but you're saving it by extending the life of the membrane because it's not exposed to UV, and you're also saving costs and energy by allowing the roof to be cooler and not having to use as much air conditioning during the summer months. In terms of aesthetics, a traditional roof is usually a black membrane, and it's usually not very attractive looking. And with a green roof, it's actually greenscape. You're looking out into green, you're seeing plants and flowers and bees and butterflies and probably some ladybugs hopping around. So it's just a beautiful environment.
I think that was really one of those systems that we talk a lot about this building and this project not having any groundbreaking technology. It was just a compilation, and the right compilation in bringing all the technologies together up front. But the stormwater system was one of those that was really pretty groundbreaking, tying everything together and being an ultra-urban setting that had zero discharge.
We had a number of goals when it came to developing the native landscaping for this site. Probably the first one, and maybe the most important, was just to have a beautiful setting for this green building, something that people would really enjoy walking through on their way into the building. And the second was we really wanted to use a wide array of native plants in the landscaping to show the diversity of plants that are out there and available for landscaping that can fit any landscaping need. And the third was, to some extent, we wanted to showcase our conservation mission in our landscaping. We wanted to take some of the plant groupings of natural communities that we protect in Indiana and replicate those in a landscaping setting. For instance, we have a beautiful natural area called Big Walnut Nature Preserve in Putnam County, and it's characterized by having these towering black walnut trees over red buds in the understory and bluebells carpeting the ground in the spring. So we incorporated all of those species into our big walnut planting. And you can walk and see some of the iconic species of that community type. And we did the same thing for a number of other communities that we protect in Indiana. So people get a little bit of a flavor of what it is we do in the state just by walking through the landscaping. Live wall was a real challenge to the landscaping because usually when you do a retaining wall of that type, what people are looking for to cover it up and make it green is a very, very aggressive vine, like a winter creeper or an English ivy, both of which are invasive and cause us great problems in natural areas in Indiana. So they were the last things we wanted to use. So we thought about what are the plants best adapted to living with a very small root area, soil depth, and we came up with a series of cliff plants, things like wild geranium, and wild columbine, our native sedum called stonecrop, and wintergreen, native wintergreen. All are found on cliffs in southern Indiana and have the ability to deal with very harsh settings. And we've put those into the live wall, and they're doing quite well. It's really amazing to look at the photos before and after we put in this landscaping. Before it was asphalt and gravel, and now we have over 14,000 square feet of native landscaping. So we've got an important piece of greenscaping right here in downtown Indianapolis that is visible to everyone driving by on Ohio Street, and anyone who walks through can see just how this has changed from the sterile landscape that it was before.
From the perspective of the Nature Conservancy, it was less expensive to build an on-site zero-discharge system with less infrastructure than it would have been to build a conventional stormwater system and connect it back to the city's combined sewer. From the perspective of the city, every gallon that is kept from the combined sewer is money saved in energy and operations of their combined sewer and their wastewater treatment plants. One of the things that this site brings to the city of Indianapolis, in fact to the United States, is one of the first ultra-urban developments to have a zero impact on a combined sewer. It sets the standard very high for all other communities in low-impact development.
Some of the big lessons learned, I think, during this process were the need for really tight coordination from the design process through construction in dealing with a very tight site, trying to get all of our stormwater to stay on the site, you know, with geothermal wells in the mix there too. I think that's the biggest lesson learned, is you got to really up front look at everything.
One of the things we really wanted to accomplish with this building and with the site was to serve as a model and an example that you could get out there and touch and feel, and would really not only impact the 1 acre site that we had, but potentially impact Indianapolis and help other people to make those same decisions, or even nationally. And stormwater and the way that we handle that on site is one of those areas that really did leverage up. Other people paid attention to it, have looked at making similar decisions on their own property, not only in Indiana, Indianapolis, but nationwide.
The fact that it wasn't a cost increase to do so was also a big benefit in being able to show people that.
A fundamental concept of green building is energy efficiency, which delivers low operating costs and environmental benefits. During the design of a building, the architect takes into consideration all the ways energy will be generated, used, and managed on the site. A building uses energy in several ways. These include the lighting, heating and cooling, computers, and appliances. A building project can create energy by utilizing renewable energy sources, such as wind, solar, and geothermal. The energy goal of green building is twofold. First, to use energy efficiently, and second, to produce energy sustainably if a renewable source is viable. It is essential for the client and designer to consider the characteristics of the site that influence the viability of using renewable energy sources. Another important factor is the integration between the building systems and the natural environment.
Energy is one of those categories that's very important for the LEED Platinum rating. Obviously, you need to get a lot of points in EA Credit 1 so that you can get to that level. We have to look at a bunch of different things and how they all interact, from the light systems and how using less lighting introduces less heat into the space, so therefore you can reduce the HVAC loads, to the raised floor system, which allows us to use smaller fans and pushing that air through the space, all the way to, you know, what type of insulation we have in the walls. And all of these things kind of come together, including renewable resources like on-site energy, wind turbines, to really get that energy model, you know, kind of shrunk down in terms of your energy use.
Right, and from our perspective, I think there was really three things related to energy. The first is, reducing energy has a close impact on the environment, which is a big part of our mission. The second, reduced energy costs for the ongoing operations was important to us as an organization. And the third part about energy was making it as automated as possible. All of the controls in the building, even though we're the Nature Conservancy and we're probably pretty in tune with that and careful about managing our energy in the building, it's made a world of difference to have that automated. We don't have to think about turning lights as we come out, and it's saving us energy consistently throughout. So that was really an added bonus of those sensor features throughout the building that made a big difference for our energy costs.
The main elements of energy efficiency within this project are the very efficient light fixtures that we're using, the very efficient HVAC, utilizing geothermal technology, and the on-site wind turbines that we have were kind of the main points. Initially in Energy and Atmosphere Credit 1, we were targeting 8 points to reach in that credit, but after going through the design and determining that we were able to get more, it helps us in our quest for LEED Platinum.
And as an owner, I imagine any owner that you go to and say, hey, I can save 35% on your energy bills for the future of this building. Whether it's an environmental decision or whether it's purely for the operational costs of the building, that's a tough thing to pass up, especially if there's no more cost to that.
Exactly.
The geothermal design is, if you wanted to compare to a residential project where you might have commonly called a heat pump outside that exchanges its heat to the air, this one actually exchanges its heat into the earth. And it can do that year-round. So in the winter, when we want to heat with our geothermal system, we're pulling heat out of the 55-degree common earth temperature and using that heat to transfer through a cooling medium into the space. In the summer, then, when we want to reject heat, because we want to get rid of heat that's in the building, then we send that fluid back into the earth, which will be hotter than the 55-degree temperature, and we sink it into the earth and get rid of the heat that way. The components in a geothermal system involve transferring a fluid, and we use a glycol solution. It's called propylene glycol. We transfer that fluid through piping that runs underground and into what we call bores or wells. We drill wells down into the earth, and in this project we drilled down 300 feet into the ground, and we used 38 wells to accomplish the tonnage that we need to transfer the heat into the earth. We chose the vertical bores on this side because it uses the least amount of land area, and being limited in an urban setting to just a small site here, we took advantage of the parking lot and some of the landscaping outside and developed our well field outside. In this job, it's a little unique in that we have a raised floor system, and the raised floor system takes advantage of supplying our air from our heat pumps down under the floor and using the entire floor as a plenum, and then you decide how much air comes into the space by using floor diffusers that are located in strategic locations based upon the occupancy. The airflow from the heat pump units supplying underneath the floor supplies a temperature that is typically around 60 degrees, and that makes it comfortable for that air to come up around you. We use the underfloor air distribution system because we have the cleanest air that came through our heat pump unit that was filtered and it was conditioned air. We supply that into the plenum. We supply that up into, let's say, your cubicle or your room through a floor diffuser. It moves that dirty air up to the ceiling, and then we return the air at the ceiling. So we're always keeping the cleanest air around the occupants. The underfloor air system also offers an acoustic separation between air delivery into the space coming from underneath the floor. It has to pass through a pretty heavy floor panel. That separation of the air, which is at a very low velocity, very low static pressure, actually moves fairly slow up through the space, and so it doesn't make as much noise. One of the lead points we went after here was increased ventilation. And it's important to bring fresh air into the building. We're building the buildings tighter. We have a more controlled environment for infiltration of dirty air coming in from the outside. So we have a dedicated outside air heat pump unit that brings in the amount of air that we need based upon a given amount of air per person that we account for. We condition that air and distribute it throughout the building by ducting it to each one of the heat pump units. Each one gets their own source of outside air. In our modeling, what we call our energy modeling of the building, we computer simulated it through a year's operation. And the year's operation energy costs for the building were expected to be about $24,000. We're saving $10,000 a year by using the geothermal, the more efficient lighting system on this building, and the method that we're using to deliver air to the space with the underfloor air system. So we think we have a decent payback on this project.
I think one of the things that a lot of people don't think about in terms of energy efficiency is introducing natural daylight into the space. Within this project, we're able to get every occupiable space of view and natural daylight, which reduces the amount of electric lighting that's required and therefore reduces the amount of HVAC that's required, therefore reducing your total energy consumption.
With the added benefit of all the staff able to have natural daylight in their workspace.
The goal that we were trying to address with this building as it applies to LEED was to, number one, we have to provide comfortable lighting that suits the purpose of the people that are here. And at the same time, we need to minimize wasteful lighting, overlighting things, as well as LEED's very particular about amounts of light that spill out of the building onto the site. So we had to be very careful about placement of the light fixtures so that, you know, where they are from the windows, so that we're not throwing a whole bunch of light out of the windows onto the site. The fixtures we selected in here, a lot of them use what's a high output fluorescent light. It allowed for the fixture body, the shape of the fixture, to be much smaller, so it's a more economical use of materials in constructing the fixtures. We tried to provide a light level through ambient lighting. Most of it is indirect. It bounces off the ceiling and down onto the space on the order of 20 to 30 foot candles, which is it's a comfortable level, but sometimes that needs to be supplemented by task lighting at the spaces. And the goal in a building like this is to provide a nice, comfortable level so that everybody feels good in the space. And then if they're working on a particular something at their desk, then you put a light right there where they need it, rather than lighting the entire space to a much higher level. In this building, we made extensive use of occupancy sensors throughout the building, not only in the individual offices, but also in the open areas and the corridors, so that as you walk through this building, the lights will turn on as you go through it. Then they'll stay on for probably about 15 minutes, and that's adjustable, and they'll go out. So if an area in the building is unoccupied for more than 15 minutes, all the lights will shut out. So we're not wasting energy just turning the lights on at 8 o'clock in the morning and off at 5. They're only on when somebody actually needs the light. In addition to the occupancy sensors that are in the building, along the perimeter, mostly on the north and south faces of the building, we have a good bit of glass expanse. So the light fixtures that are closest to the walls have built-in photoelectronic sensors into the fixtures, so that we can actually dim those fixtures as the light levels come up from outside. And what that allows us to do then is even out the light levels across the floor, so that whereas typically in a building like this, as the sun comes up and moves across the sky during the day, the one side of the building is too bright, and then it gets too dark, and then the other side of the building is too bright. And what we can do is we can automatically adjust the light levels so that they stay pretty even throughout, as well as lowering the consumption of electricity. If it's very bright outside, there's no point in having artificial lighting, so we shut it off. One of the advantages that we see by using fluorescent light fixtures is that the efficacy, or the amount of light compared to the amount of energy that I have to put in to get that light out, is higher, so that the fluorescent fixture is much more efficient than an incandescent fixture, which boils down to less heat given off by the fixture, not less energy being used. I'm using less electricity. I save money there, but I also save money because I'm putting less heat into the space, which means I have to do less air conditioning. The exterior site lighting that was designed for this building had to meet LEED requirements, and the LEED requirements basically call for very, very little light trespass onto the adjoining properties. You control the output of the light, that it's all down. We can't have any light shining up and meet LEED requirements because of dark sky type concerns.
Some of the lessons that you can take away from this exercise are that every bit and piece within the building really affects the overall energy usage of the entire structure. So you can't necessarily think about one thing and changing it without having to go back and rethink every other little piece. Everything's all really tied together.
From major decisions such as building alignment and site layout to minor decisions such as interior paint colors and windows, the Nature Conservancy thoughtfully designed its energy systems to achieve the goals of energy efficiency and productivity. Materials usage and management in a green building also demonstrate a key principle of sustainability. When selecting materials for a green building, the design team must consider several factors, such as the source, composition, durability, and recyclability. A primary goal of green building is to use building materials that are sustainable. This means that materials are extracted, harvested, and manufactured within the region where the building is located. It also means using recycled content materials, such as bathroom tiles made from recycled glass bottles. A material that can be reused or recycled, such as a carpet that can be reused in the manufacture of a new carpet, is also sustainable. Also, a sustainable material is one that does not give off toxic chemical fumes. Most paints, adhesives, carpets, and furniture give off volatile organic compounds, or VOCs. Over time, these harmful chemicals evaporate from the building materials into the air we breathe. This is called off-gassing, and the effect gives a traditional building that new car smell. Long-term exposure to these chemicals is unhealthy for the people who live or work in the building. Green buildings avoid the use of materials that off-gas these chemicals and instead use low VOC materials. Finally, another goal of green building is sustainable waste management. This includes the recycling of waste during construction and after the building is complete. Building materials include everything from the steel structure and drywall to the flooring, paint, and furniture. Therefore, it is necessary for the client and designer to collaborate and share the common goal of using the most sustainable materials possible.
In terms of LEED requirements, there are a number of different things in the materials and resources category, like utilizing low VOC paints and adhesives and things like that, using rapidly renewable resources, a couple of different things that we've tried to incorporate within the project as much as possible, recycled materials, all that kind of stuff. But I think one of the things that gets kind of lost a little bit is the fact that a lot of times you don't have to use a material in a space in order to accomplish what you're trying to do, and really the use of no material is probably the most sustainable thing you can do.
And materials to us was really important because we had certain materials that we wanted in the project that really meant something to us. We've got a lot of Indiana limestone in the project. We have a lot of Indiana hardwoods. The hardwood was produced on 3 of our preserves through sustainable forestry practices. So that material throughout the space not only warms up the space and makes it feel more like our mission, but it also gives us the ability to talk about things like sustainable forestry. As we bring people through the building for tours, we can help educate.
One of the things that people sometimes forget about is reusing materials when they can. Case in point, when we reused the bricks from the buildings that were on site previously.
The Nature Conservancy project had LEED requirements to divert 75% of the construction waste from the project away from traditional landfills. On this project, we utilized an on-site trash sorting and separation process in which we separated the construction debris into several categories. These categories were aluminum and metals, cardboard, wood products, general trash, construction debris such as that would go into a clean fill. We were able to divert 79% of the waste from the project away from a landfill to a recycled or a clean fill site. This resulted in 129 tons of debris that was redirected. Another component of the Nature Conservancy were the regional manufactured materials. This is a LEED requirement for 20% of the materials on the project to be manufactured within a 500-mile radius of the project. 60% of all materials on the project were manufactured within this 500-mile radius. Some of the major components that are regionally manufactured are the structure, the steel, the concrete, the rebar reinforcement, and the Indiana limestone, which is on the exterior of the building. The existing structures on the project site were not fit for use or occupancy and required demolition for the clearing of the site for the new project. This allowed us to look at the projects, decide what could be reused or recycled. And the architect reviewed the brick on the existing buildings. During demolition, this brick was removed, cleaned, and then we reused the brick for the exterior and lobby of the building. And it turned out to be a unique 100% recycled component and a beautiful aspect of the exterior. It really blends in well with the building and gives it a lot of age and character right from the beginning. With all construction projects, large or small, there are opportunities to use several of the methods utilized on this project to help your project become more green.
From the beginning, we really understood that there were a lot of LEED requirements in terms of materials. So being able to talk with you from the very beginning about the potential to use some wood that you had in your properties down to reusing some of the brick that was on site, it was good to really kind of get that stuff fleshed out in the beginning because we knew that there were going to be lead time issues in some instances.
That upfront planning about the wood was really important for us as an organization because we needed to be able to plan in advance how do we do a sustainable forestry harvest on 3 of our properties. So that allowed us to pick out red oak, shagbark hickory, maple, and tulip poplar for use in the building. Again, a really neat part of the building that we were tied into closely. Our staff members had touched that multiple times before it made its way onto the construction site. So it really warms up our space and, again, ties us back into the mission even when we're working at a desk and looking at wood in the building.
When selecting the materials for the Nature Conservancy, working closely with the architect and the client, our goal was to bring the outdoors in. The Nature Conservancy really didn't want to feel that departure. So when we just selected the finished palette, whether it was the carpet that had shades of browns or these trees in it, when we were looking at the sidelights with etched trees in the glass, or the colors we selected, they all contributed to elements you would see in nature. It just felt natural. The wood is another element as it wraps around the space and walks you through the space. The stone does the same thing, and we also used a product called Curie board, which is out of sorghum wood, and we use that for most of our millwork. And that did a couple of things. One, it looks great, and people are always wanting to know what it is. But two, it is basically its own panel, so you don't have a substrate or anything else that you have to apply to it. You literally cut it and stick it up. So really, every tiny component is sending this message, not only for sustainability, but for bringing the natural elements into the space. We tried to select materials that would try to live the life of the building with it, so they wouldn't have to actually replace materials throughout its life cycle. The carpet tile and the other materials that we use have longevity to maintain itself in the space without having to actually tear it up and lay something down in the future. But we had to make sure that we selected finishes that they could afford. So the carpet tiles, the paint, that was really the majority of the space. Being able to have items such as the wood that was owned by the Nature Conservancy was contributing finishes that we didn't necessarily have to spend a lot of money on. So whether it's finding some material, reuse is always a great way to do things for a low cost. Paint goes a long way, and low VOC doesn't cost much more or any more than it would to buy traditional paint. And carpet tiles, while it's seen as an upgrade to broadloom, it goes such a long way in the end where you would never have to upgrade it. So really you can do a space that's beautiful and that's LEED compliant without spending a lot of money. The majority of the space has very little. The whole entire lower level is sealed concrete. A lot of the first floor is as well. The ceilings are exposed for the most part. So we really tried to pay attention to where we wanted to use the materials and how. And if it didn't make a significant impact on the space, then we chose not to use any. The chairs that we have, the task chairs, have high recycled content, and they can basically recycle almost everything down to the gasket on those things. For the workstations, being a laminate, there are pieces of it that they can recycle. So the substrate they could recycle, and they would break it apart into pieces at the end of its life cycle. Another way that the furniture has recyclability is not necessarily in breaking down its components and recycling it, but just reuse.
Here at the Nature Conservancy, we try to incorporate sustainability into everything we do on a daily basis. For example, for events, we encourage people to use chinaware and glassware as opposed to disposables. We also have a recycling program here at the Nature Conservancy. Obviously, we have the standard recycling of plastics, metals, and paper. We also do electronics recycling, and we compost all of our yard wastes.
One of the principles that I really enjoyed during the process was the principle that sometimes the most sustainable material to use is no material at all, not only from a cost perspective, but the sustainability aspect of making conscious decisions not to include materials in the building was one that you guys made fairly regularly in the process.
Right. Just the fact of not having to produce that and use the energy to make it and ship it and all of those associated things is a huge savings.
So 2 examples of how materials look different in this building, and that creates a great dialogue education-wise, is some of the tile that we have in the building isn't uniform. So when it gets installed, it actually has a little variances in the grout lines. People sometimes kind of stop and stare and look at that, and that gives us a great opportunity to say why that is and what the material was that composed those. And another is the wood, actually, during install. That wood that we used for turning in a tongue-and-groove flooring probably wasn't traditional wood. It wasn't large trees that were harvested to turn into, it was some of the smaller understory trees. That created a little bit more knottiness and grain. The contractors, as they were installing it, really kind of questioned us, bring us over and say, there's going to be some more gaps to this wood. Are you okay with the graininess? That's not what walnut usually looks like in my mind, or red oak. Again, that was an educational piece that we were able to tell the contractors where that wood came from, why it was a little bit different than maybe they purchased at their local hardware store.
Every material in the Nature Conservancy's new headquarters was carefully selected by considering its entire life cycle. This ensures that the consumption and waste of building materials has a minimal impact on our environment. In a green building, the site design, water management, energy systems, and building materials all contribute to the building's impact on overall quality of life. The definition of quality of life is how people interact with the building. This encompasses the project's impacts both for the building occupants and the surrounding community. A green building affects its occupants differently than a traditional building. For the people who live or work in the building, this means greater productivity, fewer sick days, and greener options for transportation. These impacts are the result of increased natural light inside the building, healthier air, and facilities for bicycle commuters. A green building also impacts the surrounding community in a positive way. By setting an example of economic, social, and environmental sustainability, it ultimately influences the vitality of the community.
When you think about all the different aspects that go into this building, the big things that come out in terms of quality of life are the natural daylight, the views, the ability to control your own HVAC at your desk. But it even goes down into the things like low VOC paints and elements like that that really, increase the level of quality in terms of air. All those things kind of lumped together kind of really bring the quality of life up another notch.
And from an owner's perspective, I get to see that firsthand when mapping out who is going to sit where in the new space. That's traditionally a pretty contentious time as people decide who gets the corner office and which workstation. And in this building, instead, everybody has a view outside, so nobody really cared where they sat.
But throughout the process, we try to design to materials that were very durable, that had a very long life cycle, in as much as the fiber cement board that's on the outside of the walls, the limestone that's on the exterior, even down to the concrete on the floors, being very easy to clean and maintain. Green roofs also help to increase the longevity of a roof membrane as well.
A big part of the story that we wanted to tell with this building, we're an organization that tries to find practical solutions and find middle ground that works for everybody. Green building seems to be that in our mind. A long time ago, there was this premium for green building. So the storyline of green building was you pay more for it up front, but you recoup those savings 15 years down the road. The average business doesn't know where they're going to be 15 years down the road, so it didn't make a lot of sense if you didn't have an environmental bent to your decision. But in our mind, if you could build green and not have it cost a premium, then you're just recouping savings over time. It made sense for anybody, whether you had an environmental impact in mind or not.
The LEED building has really boosted morale with our employees. It's a more productive and happier work environment for everyone. There are many reasons for that. I think the natural light is a big component. Being able to manually control the temperature in each of the workspaces is another component of that. Having the native plant landscaping outside of the window that you can look at each and every day reminds you of the mission of why you're here.
Market Square Arena and the ramp kind of hid Cole Noble for many years. And so now that the ramp has come down, this east side of Indianapolis is getting finished, I would say. For years, just a small group of local business owners would get together when something would come up, and now we have a formal organization because there's such a dynamic movement here in Cole Noble and on the east side. And I mean, I've got to say the Conservancy building here has been a big part of that dynamic growth.
That businesses are starting to come into not the actual downtown area, but the surrounding area is a plus. Ohio Street is a major belt going into the actual downtown area. And for this east tip to be cleaned up the way it is, and for businesses and the Nature Conservancy building actually being built here, I think that has been a major plus in this particular area.
Actually, I didn't know what the Nature Conservancy was until you built this facility right across the street from my condo. And I took a tour of the building after the construction, and I have to say I was really impressed with the type of commitment to the city and its environment. And I think this kind of project goes to show as a great example as to how to conduct business while also keeping in mind the betterment of the community.
We really believe that green buildings provide a triple bottom line. That's incredibly important for this city. I'll use our building as an example. The environment, obviously, that's pretty obvious. You're cleaning the water, you're reducing energy consumption, you are thinking about the environment every step of the way. And so how you operate, and every day when you come to work every day, you're doing something with the environment considered. That's huge. Healthy environments and a healthy neighborhood create ultimately to a greater output for our local economy, helping Indianapolis thrive, creating more places that seem vital and where people want to go. So we believe that our building had much to do with meeting Indianapolis's needs for a better environment, stronger neighborhoods, a stronger civic life, not to mention the economic benefits that are secondary to the development. Green buildings and sustainability are part of an overall future, I think, that's bright for this city and will be a very, very important contributor to the future of this city.
We've established a green business initiative, and that has grown considerably over the last 2 to 3 years because more and more people and more companies and entities are recognizing the benefits of living and creating a more sustainable environment. Because LEED requires the use of local sources, it's an opportunity to create economic growth in the Indianapolis area by using local manufacturers and, as well as architects and engineers, but we're also using the local resources. More recently in Indianapolis, there's been a resurgence and redevelopment in the Near East Side downtown area, and the Nature Conservancy has really taken the lead in helping that redevelopment, which has been a great benefit to our city.
At the Efroymson Conservation Center, the Nature Conservancy created an outstanding model of green building by thoughtfully integrating elements of site design, water, energy, and materials. The collaborative relationship between the Nature Conservancy and the architect ensured the efficient performance of these integrated systems. The result of these harmonized systems has created a healthy and productive work environment, a valuable community asset. It's clear that this is no ordinary building. It embodies the mission and values of the Nature Conservancy and benefits our entire community. As we've seen, green building practices benefit an individual organization and serve as a catalyst for sustainable urban growth. Indianapolis is leading the way in embracing initiatives focused on sustainability, creating a more livable city now and for future generations.